This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
My guest today on Sports Files is the president and CEO of the Memphis Convention and Visitors Bureau, Kevin Kane. Work production in Memphis and the Mid-South over the last week is probably a little bit off the mark, and things will likely not get much better in the near future as many residents have come down with a little something called Grizz fever. It had been a fairly rare disease, but over the last few years, more and more cases have been identified. There is no known cure. The disease just comes and goes, and the month of May is an exceptionally vulnerable time of the year to catch the bug, although nobody seems to be complaining. In all seriousness, since I last spoke to you, the Grizzlies eliminated the Clippers in round one of the Western Conference playoffs and now are all tied up at 1 with the Thunder in the conference semifinals. After splitting 2 in Oak City, the teams will now play a pair in Memphis with Game 3 set for this Saturday and Game 4 for Monday. Now, when the Grizzlies relocated to Memphis from Vancouver for the start of the 2001-2002 season, there were a lot of people behind the scenes that were instrumental in getting the deal done. There were also many with knowledge of the impending move, yet they all kept it close to the vest. Kevin Kane, the president and CEO of the Memphis Convention and Visitors Bureau, was one of those in the know. He also is a huge sports fan, so it didn't take much convincing for him to realize what the impact of having a major professional sports franchise would mean to the community. A dozen years later, the Grizzlies have become a staple in Memphis and have made a major financial mark on the city. And that suits Kane just fine. Of course, when it comes to the impact of sports in Memphis, Kane has his finger firmly on the pulse. He's involved in bringing tournaments to town, such as an NCAA men's basketball regional next March, and possibly the new American Athletic Conference hoop tournament in the not-too-distant future. He's also seen his fair share of misses, especially when it comes to the SEC. But Kane and his associates are never afraid to step up to the plate. Today, we examine the impact of the Grizzlies and Tigers. We look ahead to the future of sporting events in the Bluff City and the overall importance of them. And we do so with the pride of Christian Brothers High School, the lifelong Memphian Kevin Kane, next on Sports Files. Kevin, always great to see you. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Greg. Great to see you as well.
Just talked about Grizzlies fever. I know you have to have a bout of it, right?
It's so good for the city. This is everything that we hoped it would be when the franchise came here over a decade ago. Can you believe it's been that long?
I can't believe it.
And boy, this is just so good for Memphis. It's just like, when the Tigers would make it to the Final Four, how the entire community, whether you're a sports fan or not, you just got the fever. And that's what's happening as we're learning about the NBA and we're learning about the NBA postseason over the last few years. That's what's happening now with the Grizzlies, and I think it's just fantastic.
Winning is certainly contagious, but I think a lot of people are just catching on to this product, this blue-collar, bring-your-lunch-pail-to-work type team, and they're getting fans not only from Memphis and our community, but outside, going east in Tennessee, going south in Mississippi, north to Missouri, and west to Arkansas. They're getting fans from all over the place.
Well, I can tell you, it's definitely a regional draw. In their weekend games, they sell tickets to people, because we know we're selling hotel rooms in connection with weekend games. So There's no question about it. I mean, we're the only basketball team between here in Atlanta or here in Chicago or here in Dallas. So that's a pretty big geographical footprint for the professional basketball fan to get their appetite wet with the real thing.
Without getting too technical, what type of economic impact is this team having on the community when it goes into the postseason, when it has all these extra games in the postseason that are selling out?
It's almost impossible to measure. It's just like in college basketball, when I always tell Josh, just stay in the top 25. Because when you're in the top 25, they're talking about every game. You're part of Sports Center. You're part of the highlight reel. They're talking, mentioning Memphis, Memphis, Memphis. And I'll tell you, when you get in the pro circuit, it even gets magnified even more. And now we're down to only 8 teams playing out of 30. And let's hope we even get a little bit fewer teams than that somewhere down the road. And, it's just the exposure is incredible. I mean, they're talking about us morning, noon, and night. I mean, and it's Memphis, Memphis, Memphis. So it's, it's tens of millions of dollars of exposure for the community, exposure that we couldn't afford to buy, so it's great for the city.
You had a nice relationship with former owner Michael Heisley, and we certainly wish him well in his recovery. We've talked about him a number of times here on Sports Files. But now with new ownership, with majority owner Robert Pera, Jason Levian is there day to day. So I'm sure you have a very nice relationship with Jason. What is that like? And do you have a relationship with Robert Pera? And how does it differ from the relationship you have with Heisley?
Well, I think, Mike was probably a little more hands-on than Robert has been up to this point. But I will tell you, Jason Levian has hit the ground running here. And we have so many more limited local owners now than we had in the past. So, you've got a lot of them engaged. And of course, we had Commissioner Stern and his wife were here, as you know, last week. And we had a little pre-game reception and conversation with him. And he's just really excited about what he's seeing with this franchise. And as I say, Jason is very hands-on, very enthusiastic, very energetic. And, is doing all the right things in the community. I mean, they want this. They know this is Memphis's team. And I think one of the things through the sale of the team, I think we solidified that for a long, long time, and that's real important.
Heisley would confer with you about things, and other local prominent personalities, from businessmen to community leaders. Is Jason doing the same thing?
Jason reaches out and talks to a number of people on all the big issues. We had a pretty tough issue that we had to deal with a couple of weeks ago as it related to the professional privilege tax that most Memphians don't even know exists.
Explain that briefly.
Well, what it is, if you're in the state of Tennessee twice during a year, so it doesn't apply to the Titans, it does apply to the Predators and the Grizzlies, and you're a visiting ball player, you pay $2,500 per game privilege fee to play here. Other cities are collecting the money from Zebo and Tony Allen when they go to various cities. So we're not doing anything that, that other communities aren't doing. And what that fund does in Nashville and in Memphis, it funnels through the Convention and Visitors Bureau, but we can't spend it. I mean, it's spent by the building to benefit bringing more events to the city. So the upcoming Paul McCartney concert, the Elton John concert, the Usher concert. There's a lot of concerts that are enticed and subsidized to come here with that fund. Other sporting events that we could possibly lure to the community are used. That fund can be used for that. Our dream is to someday host a women's NCAA Women's Final Four here. We got the men's NCAA Regional coming here next year. So, yeah, that fund is important for the city and the county, and it's important for the building. So we certainly hope that it stays in place.
All right, let's talk about the other major sports entity in this city, and that's the University of Memphis Tigers, and we'll get into the regional in just a second. New conference, about to become a charter member in the American Athletic Conference. At first, it was going to be the Big East, and if it was the Big East, the tournament, the basketball tournament, it's in Madison Square Garden.
That's
it's in the Mecca. You don't get a chance to host. But now you have put in a bid. You're trying to be one of the cities that will probably be a revolving door, a rotating basis with other cities to host this tournament. Tell me a little bit about the bid, whatever you can say, and how confident are you that you think this city will be able to host in the future?
Well, I think there's no question about it with Madison. The only probably the biggest consolation of all the teams, the Catholic schools and everybody that left the Big East, the biggest consolation was all of a sudden we found ourselves thinking that we would never be in the conference tournament conversation for a long, long time.
Right.
And we're right back in it in the first year. And there was a bid submitted for 2014. It would be wonderful to have it because we know that Louisville and Cincinnati and UConn are in the conference next year. I mean, who knows the way these things are changing. We know Louisville's leaving.
Right.
And it would be great to have that conference tournament here, especially with the history with Louisville and Cincinnati and the fact that we know they travel so well to Memphis as they have in our days when we were in the same conference together. So let's hope we're the winner on this bid. They have options. They may go neutral, and or they may go to a host city within the conference. And I think the front runners would probably be UConn, Cincinnati, or us. I can't imagine they would go to Louisville with Louisville leaving the league the next year. So it's probably between the three of us or a neutral site. Maybe Orlando. I'm sure Orlando probably put in a bid, but I think we're in the mix. And I know that Athletic Director Bowen and the Memphis Grizzlies staff and, of course, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we put a very aggressive bid on the table. And we know that we can host this tournament with no problem because we got such great experience hosting conference men's championships here. And the FedEx Forum is, without a shadow of a doubt, the nicest arena that they'll be considering. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that something good happens.
Well, let me ask you this.
We'll know in just a few weeks. They'll make that decision before the end of May.
You had success hosting the Conference USA tournament. I don't know from a stature standpoint where this new conference is on the pecking order, but can I ask you if the bid is substantially higher or just a little higher or the same as what you did for Conference USA?
I think the initial bid is a little higher than what we offered for Conference USA. And I will say, no disrespect to Conference USA, because we had a great relationship with CUSA, and we hosted that tournament here many, many years in a row, and it was very good for us as a community. But, you know, the defending national champions, Cincinnati, the Memphis-Cincinnati, Louisville rivalry, UConn, big time basketball school. I think it'd be really exciting to have that inaugural tournament right here in the FedEx Forum next year.
Kevin, quick answer, and you could skip it if you want to, but do you feel you were wronged by Conference USA not being able to host in your final year? Or did you understand them going with a school, Tulsa, which eventually is going to be in the American Athletic Conference, right? They're coming.
I think if they would have realized Tulsa was leaving, they probably would have opted for Memphis. But, you know, they made the decision, and, you know, I don't begrudge them for that. We hosted that tournament for a number of years. Obviously, Memphis was the most successful site of any location that they ever went to in the history of the league. So I think our record speaks for itself.
You have, as you mentioned, the NCAA regional next year. That's important. That's big. That puts you on the national landscape, and you get that type of public relations from a national scope. From an economic standpoint, how big is it?
It's off the charts. I mean, when you look at most of these regional sites are facilities a lot larger than Memphis. I mean, sometimes they will go into a dome situation even for a regional final.
Exactly.
You know, the last time we hosted it, you had North Carolina, you had Oklahoma, you had Blake Griffin here, you had North Carolina who went on to win the national championship that year, you had Syracuse and Gonzaga. And look at the players that we're now seeing in the NBA that were in Memphis for that weekend.
Right.
Blake Griffin, and, you know, go on and on and on. Ellington, who was our three-point specialist at the beginning of the year.
Exactly.
So it's big for the city, and, you know, to be one of those four locations, every college basketball lover in the country, their eyes are glued on you.
What other events in the near future are you going to make a run at? And I know we talk a lot. You continually try to get something from the SEC. You've had some success, other times not so successful, but you keep trying.
We love the SEC, and, you know, obviously, if you look at where they've been recently, they're staying within cities that are within the conference. We put a very aggressive bid in for the men's baseball championships. We thought AutoZone Park would be just a perfect location for that. We'd even worked out a place where we could park all the campers, because there's a lot of RVs that come in for the baseball championships down in Hoover, Alabama. You know, Alabama won the bid. I think they won the bid offering less money than what we put on the table. But, you know, Birmingham is the headquarters for the SEC. I think there's obviously a lot of political ties to Birmingham. You know, they took the conference championship game away from Birmingham and took it to Atlanta some years ago. So, you know, maybe they feel like they have to keep some presence in Birmingham, and I certainly understand that. But, you know, we've got a great relationship with Commissioner Slive and Associate Commissioner Maddox and the various folks that work there. And, my job is to bring events to the city. So, we'll aggressively, if there's an opportunity to bid on an SEC event, we're going to do that.
As I'm sure you're aware of, there was a story not too long ago where it was suggested that Memphis should be one of 25 cities in the United States that should bid on the Olympic Games, and I forget if it was 2024, whatever the year was. Your thoughts on that, because I actually know some people, and you probably do as well, that feel, yes, Memphis could host. Memphis could host. We have Tunica. We have this. We have that. How outlandish is that? But how nice is it to hear that Memphis is on that list?
Well, let me just say that per the mayor's direction, we are responding to that bid, that letter. And we are going to express an interest. How realistic is it really that Memphis would even make the short list? Who knows? But I will tell you, who would have thought that Chattanooga would have hosted an Olympic gold medal event when the Olympics in 1996 were in Atlanta? So
Birmingham,
that's right,
with soccer.
That's right. So just open that door. You know, if we could get men's USA basketball here just for pre-Olympic trials, how big would that be? You know, we've got boxing, which is already, you know, you got the relationship with the Young brothers down in Tunica who have worked with USA Boxing and have a relationship there. We've got a lot of land in this part of the country. I think back in the late 80s, people thought Atlanta didn't have a chance of hosting the Olympics. Obviously, they're a lot larger market than we are, but they didn't have the Georgia Dome and they didn't have those facilities that they had to build to host the Olympics. So, you know, I think we've got nothing to lose. I mean, why not at least establish hopefully a dialogue with the U.S. Olympic Committee, because who knows, there could be some good things, because we do have great facilities here. There could be some good spillover that could come as a result of that.
So very, very interesting, as I said at the outset of this show, that you're not afraid, you and your people are not afraid to step up to the plate.
Not at all.
I didn't know if I get a little snicker, a little laugh, a little snarl, nothing. It seems like never up, never in, right?
That's right. And, you know, is it realistic? Yeah, it may not be realistic, but why not just send the message, you know, we'd love to talk to you guys. And, you know, people say, well, God, that costs billions of dollars. Well, yeah, but guess what? Those billions of dollars come from sponsors from all over the world. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a FedEx, AutoZone, International Paper-led initiative. It could be companies coming in from all over the world. Wherever the Olympics go, the sponsors follow.
Kevin, final thing for you, real quick on this. There was a rumor, or actually a story that was broken on my radio station by Rob Fisher about the Redbirds would soon own, or the Cardinals would soon own the Redbirds. What do you know about that?
Well, I think they've been working towards that. I think obviously that would solidify the Redbirds being a Cardinal affiliate, which I think we all realize that's probably a no-brainer in this market. So hopefully that's all going to work out. I don't know the stadium. You know, there's a lot of issues with the bondholders and the stadium, and is the city going to now take ownership of the stadium? I don't know how all that gets worked out, but I think the important thing is to somehow, some way solidify that relationship with the St. Louis Cardinals, you know, with the parent team.
Fair enough. We'll wrap up our interview with something I call 5 for the road. So I'll give you a question. First thing that comes to mind, don't dwell too much on it, just some quick things, find out a little bit more about Kevin Kane. Your favorite professional sports team, you can't say the Grizzlies.
I can't say the Grizzlies?
No, you can't.
New York Yankees.
Okay, I knew it would be the Grizzlies, but the Yankees is your pick. Favorite pro athlete of all time?
Of all time? I'd say now probably Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
Hopefully he comes back for the Yankees.
Well, let's hope.
Why the Yankees tie-in, real quick?
Well, my family's from New York,
Okay.
so I was raised a Giants and a Yankees fan.
Gotcha. Favorite musician, singer? We just talked about McCartney's coming here. Elton John was here. I see you at a lot of concerts. You're a big fan of music, but who do you like the most?
I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I'd probably say Paul McCartney.
I'm with you right there. Although Timberlake's probably moving up,
Justin Timberlake, we're so proud of him. You know, he's the biggest thing since Elvis. He's a shining star, and we should be very proud of our hometown hero.
Unbelievable to have the greatest performer.
And we're going to have his concert here in November.
Exactly.
So.
The greatest performer of yesteryear in Elvis, and now I would say arguably the greatest performer today is
Justin and Jay-Z sold out Yankee Stadium, and they had to put on a second show. That's how hot this guy is.
Real quick, favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie of all time? You know, I think The Firm, and I'll tell you why, because The Firm was a billion-dollar billboard for Memphis. It really helped tourism.
It certainly did. And favorite TV series?
Favorite TV series? Oh boy, you got me stumped there. You know,
what do you watch?
I just watch all sports, so I don't know. You know, I think of a favorite TV series. I'm really.
You're gonna go with SportsCenter?
It's probably ESPN. That's where my TV's attached all the time.
Me as well. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg.
Always a pleasure. We'll take a break. We'll come back with overtime right after this. When Elliott Dent took over the Memphis University School Lacrosse program in 1997, the sport was basically in its infancy, having become a varsity sport only a year earlier. The former Hampden-Sydney College midfielder came from a part of the country where lacrosse was commonplace, the Northeast, Washington, D.C. to be exact. But Dent had a huge challenge ahead of him. First, get young men to understand the sport, and second, get them to commit to play. Fast forward to present day, and the Owls are a lacrosse power in Tennessee. They have won 8 state titles, including the past 2 seasons and 3 of the last 5. This week, the Owls' quest for a 3rd straight crown got underway. And this weekend, they'll look to qualify for next week's Final Four in Nashville. I recently met up with Elliott at MUS to talk about the success of the Owls program. Elliot, 17 years now running this MUS lacrosse program. What fires you up still 17 years into it about doing this job?
That's a good question. I get the same things that I guess have always fired me up. Every year's a new year, get a new group of kids. The team takes on a new, different personality, new challenges, new things to tweak and solve. It's kind of an ever-going formula you got to play with. So
I would imagine when you started, there were a handful of kids who said, sign me up. I've heard of lacrosse, but many who didn't have any clue about the sport. Today, you probably have to make a lot of cuts for the team because it seems like they've caught wind of what the sport's all about.
Yeah, things have changed a whole lot. I think my first few years, we were lucky if a kid started in 9th grade. I mean, I was considering someone who'd played a long time. It was pretty common for a sophomore or a junior to pick it up. Every once in a while, a senior to pick it up if they're a good athlete. Nowadays, the kids are starting real young. I think as early as nowadays, like 2nd grade. It's getting a lot different from the way it used to be. But
when you came here in the mid-90s, Christian Brothers had a team, and there was a club sport with Germantown, but basically lacrosse was not being played in Western Tennessee and in the Memphis area. And now there's a number of schools that have it. So you feel pretty good about yourself that I think here at MUS, maybe you guys started a trend.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we started a trend, but we, the folks here at MUS, some of my assistant coaches have been around for a long time. Pat Demento and David Gerhardt and I, and some other folks in the community really did a lot to try and grow the sport and make it a recreational game at the youth level so the game could spread to other schools, and the plan worked. It's grown a lot in the past few years. So
what makes it a popular sport? Why do kids like to play?
I think the sport really sells itself to boys, especially junior high school age boys. The idea of having a stick in their hands and run around hitting somebody with it, it couldn't get much better for a kid who's about 12 years old, so.
You have had an awful lot of success. What are the keys to that success?
First, it's always helps to have great players and good athletes, and over the years we've been real lucky to have that. Real lucky to have a group of kids over the years, kind of a culture that's developed over the years where the kids love the game and spend a lot of time on it, both during the season, outside the season, going to camps or going and play tournaments outside of the season, and I think that's made a huge difference.
From a personal standpoint, what type of enjoyment do you have in watching these kids grow, not only as athletes and lacrosse players, but as students?
That's the best thing is when a student comes back 5, 6, 10 years after they've graduated and just seeing who they've become. They're no longer the boys I knew, but they've grown up into young men, jobs, families.
It's rewarding, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the best part about it. So.
Your prospects for another state title this year are?
Pretty good. Granted, we still have a road ahead of us, still have some teams to play that will be good. We played Macaulay first weekend of March in the freezing cold snow in Nashville and lost to them 16-9. So that's really, I think, the team at the end of the road that we'd like to see, just so we have another chance to play them. We went up to NBA about 2 weeks ago and beat them by 2 goals or so. So, nothing's a given. So, still have a few games to play, but it looks good. So.
Has the game evolved over the years since you took over? Is it pretty much the same game you remember as a player at Hampden-Sydney?
No, I mean, I think the game has evolved. I can't remember the first time I had this conversation with some of my players asking me the same thing. It's evolved. The sticks have changed, the designs have changed. I think the influence from Canada, because they play an indoor box style game.
Right.
So some of those skills have worked their way into the game. Yeah, I mean, between I think some of the designs and technology of the stick and some of the new and different styles of play have come in, and it has evolved over the years. So.
Where I hail from, where you hail from, up in the Northeast, it's a very popular sport. Do you think it will become more popular here in the South? And what would you say to folks out there who may want to check out a lacrosse game? How would you describe it for a spectator?
It's a great spectator. I mean, if you like basketball, if you like ice hockey, it's a lot like that, sort of a constant flow, constant action. Like basketball, the score can change very quickly. The game can have runs, and my old coach used to always say a 3-goal game is a 1-goal game because
right.
A lead change can change real fast, which makes it an exciting game to watch.
What's the most important thing that happens in a game to determine the outcome? Besides obviously scoring more than your opponent.
I think possession. You know, you've got to, possess the ball. You got to get the loose balls. You have to win the face-offs. You have to take care of the ball when you have it on offense, and be smart about your shot selection. That's, I think, the real key. I think the team that, and like most sports, I think the team that dominates the possession normally comes out with a win in the end. So,
Ellie, great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Continue success.
Appreciate it, Greg.
And that'll put a wrap on this week's show. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, the locale for the Grizzlies and Thunder series shifts to FedEx Forum for Game 3 Saturday at 4 p.m. and Game 4 Monday at 8:30 p.m. And we'll have much more on the Grizzlies and their postseason run next week. And as always, you can see any of our previous shows by going to WKNO.org and clicking on KNO Tonight. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.